Good morning everyone and welcome to today's Values Assembly. It's been quite a long time since I've done one of these, so I hope I remember all the necessary bits. I'm sure I'm going to look at the wall in the assembly hall like I always do to remind me. So let's start off by thinking about our Stukeley values. So for each other we, every day we, to improve we, and together we will. Well done. Our everyday focuses are, excellent job, and our motto is, and our curriculum is, fantastic. There we go, everybody. So welcome to today's assembly. Our value today that we're thinking about is the value of care, but in particular we're thinking about change, in fact. The music that we came into, or didn't come into, I guess, the music we listened to at the start of this assembly was called The Four Seasons by Vivaldi. And I chose that piece of music because it's about particular changes, about the changing seasons. A change that we're all really familiar with. We know that spring changes to summer and summer to autumn and autumn to winter. And that's a change that we see happening all the time, and it's nothing new to any of us. But I wonder if you can think of any other changes like that, ones that happen all the time. Maybe tell somebody who's watching the assembly with you. Well, I wonder what changes you came up with. I was thinking about day changing to night and night changing back to day. I was thinking about the weather. That's always changing, isn't it? Sunshine one minute, rain the next. And those changes are okay because we understand them, we're familiar with them, they happen all the time, and there's nothing unusual in those. So we know how to handle them. They don't make us feel worried or concerned. They're just typical changes that happen all the time. But not all changes are like that. Not all changes are expected. Some changes are unexpected. And because they're unexpected, it can make us feel really uncomfortable sometimes. And it can also make us feel quite sad, especially if we didn't want the change to happen or we kind of liked it the way it was before. Now, I've got here two things. I have got Miss Barry's lovely pot plant that I have asked to borrow, so I'm going to look after it really carefully. And I've got a piece of wood. I wonder if you can think of how these two things are different. Well, the thing is, this piece of wood is not a living thing. It's just a block of wood, whereas the plant is a living thing. Now, the block of wood won't change. It's going to stay a block of wood. Something would have to happen to it to change it. Somebody would have to carve it or do something with it or throw water on it and it would get wet and maybe would disintegrate over time. But fundamentally, it's just going to stay as a block of wood. Whereas the plant will grow and change over its lifetime. And its lifetime won't be very long in my house because I'm not really very good at looking after plants. So I better make sure it gets back to Miss Barry. The thing is, all of us are living things just like that plant. We are growing and changing all the time. And the people around us grow and change all the time as well. There will be times in our lives when other things change. We might move to a new school, especially if we're year 6 and we're headed off to a new school. We might move to a new area, so we get a new house. We might even have a baby brother or sister born into our family. So there are changes that happen all the time. Now, recently, in our country and across the world, really, we've all experienced a time of change. And for us, more immediately, we've experienced a time of change in so much as school closed back in March for lots of us. And lots of us then had to do homeschooling, and I'm sure you've all got your own thoughts about how that's going or has gone. Some of you have returned to school and some of you are still at home. And so it's been a period of change. Lots of things that we would normally have done, places that we would normally have visited, people that we would normally have seen, we haven't been able to do. And for a lot of people, that kind of change has been a bit worrying, has made them feel uncomfortable and a bit strange, and maybe made them feel a little bit sad too. Now, that's not true for everybody. Some people may well have enjoyed the change. I know my dog Winnie has loved having us all at home much more. And I'm sure that there are other people that have also enjoyed this time of change. But for many of us, it's been quite a difficult time. Now, I'm going to tell you a story today all about somebody who didn't like change very much. And his name was Aziz. Now, here is a picture of Aziz. And Aziz was a weaver. Okay, so I'm going to have to read this story, so bear with me. So Aziz had lived all his life in the same small house in the same small village on the banks of a great river. He was a weaver, and every day he worked at his loom weaving pure white cloth. Once a week, he went to the market to sell the cloth and to buy food. As the years went by, many people came down the river from faraway places, bringing their goods to the village. Some of these people liked the village so much that they decided to stay. Soon, the small village became a big, busy town. Aziz saw everything changing around him and different people milling about the streets and the marketplace, and he did not like it at all. "Everything is changing around here," he grumbled to himself. "My village is big now and full of strangers wearing strange clothes and selling strange things in the market. Oh, how nice it would be if things would just stay the same." Aziz thought that everything had changed around him while he had stayed exactly the same. But of course he was wrong. He used to go out and meet people. But now he never spoke to anyone at all. He used to be happy, but now he was always miserable and complaining. One day there was a knock on Aziz's door. He opened it a tiny crack. Nobody had knocked on his door for years. Standing outside was a woman he had never seen before. She was holding out a great skein of brilliant red silk thread. It sparkled and it shone in the sunshine. Here's a picture. "I am Numi," said the woman. "I live close to you now and have heard that you are a good weaver. Will you weave this thread into cloth for me?" "I will not," said Aziz rather rudely. "I only weave white cloth." And he shut the door hard. But that night he dreamed of beautiful red silk. The next day there was another knock on the door. Aziz opened it a tiny crack, and there stood Numi. This time she was holding out a great skein of purple silk thread, and it shimmered and glowed in the sunshine. "Will you weave this cloth into thread for me?" she said. "I will pay you." "I will not," said Aziz, although he could hardly take his eyes off the beautiful silk. "I only weave white cloth." And he shut the door hard, but that night he dreamed of beautiful red and purple silks. The next day there was yet another knock at the door. Aziz opened it a tiny crack, and there stood Numi. This time she was holding out a skein of golden silk, and how it dazzled Aziz's eyes in the sunshine. Here's a picture of Aziz dreaming of all those lovely silks. The next day, there was yet another knock at the door, and Aziz opened it a tiny crack, and there stood Numi. This time she was holding out a skein of golden silk. How it dazzled Aziz's eyes in the sunshine. "Will you weave this golden thread into cloth for me?" said Numi. "It's so fine, only the best weaver could weave it." Aziz gazed longingly at the beautiful thread. It glistened like liquid in the sunshine. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to do. It had been so long since he had talked to anyone. But perhaps the golden thread had cast a spell on him, because at last he said, "Perhaps you would like to come in for a moment." He opened the door to Numi. Once she was sitting down in Aziz's house, Numi told him all about herself. She told him she'd travelled hundreds and hundreds of miles along the river and across the desert until she'd reached this town and decided to stay. She told him how frightening it had been at first, living in a place where she didn't know anyone and where people ate different foods and wore different clothes. And she told him how she'd stopped being frightened because everywhere she went, the people were so friendly and so kind and so nice. "Every time I go out," she said, "I see so many faces. Everything is different, but it's wonderful and exciting and new. There's so much to learn and find out about. Every day is like a whole new adventure." Aziz listened and stared. He'd never met anyone like Numi before, but when she asked him again if he would weave the golden thread into cloth for her, he said, "I only weave white cloth. I've never done anything else." After that, Aziz often saw Numi passing his house or in the marketplace. She always smiled and called, "Hello, Aziz." And soon Aziz found himself smiling back and calling out, "Hello, Numi." Here's a picture of them in the marketplace saying hello. Each evening when Aziz had finished his weaving, instead of complaining to himself as he used to about how dreadful everything had become, he thought about Numi and how she travelled so many miles to a new town and how frightened she must have been. Then one day Aziz said to himself, "I'm sorry I sent Numi away when she brought the beautiful silk thread around. It was brave of her to knock on my door, and I was really mean." Aziz went out looking for Numi, and he found her in the marketplace talking and laughing, and he walked up to her. "I'm sorry I refused to weave your silks into cloth, Numi," he said. "I'd be pleased to do it for you now, though." Numi's smile was so big it seemed as though the sun was shining even more brightly. She linked one of her arms through Aziz's and they walked to her home to get the silk. Now that all happened a long time ago. Aziz and Numi are now the best of friends. Aziz doesn't only weave white cloth, he weaves the most beautiful silks in the most brilliant colours, and Numi sews them into gorgeous clothes. All around the town you can see people shimmering and shining in their silk tunics and dresses, and the most shimmering and shining of all is Numi. But even better than that, Aziz has stopped complaining. After all, he often says to himself, every day is like a whole new adventure. And here's a picture. I wonder if you can remember any of the changes that happened in that story. I suppose the biggest change was with Aziz. At first he didn't like the fact that his small village was becoming a big busy town. There were lots of people that he didn't know or recognise, and they were selling things in the market that he didn't recognise. He didn't like the fact that everything was so busy, and it made him feel really miserable and grumpy. He didn't like it. He liked things the way they used to be. He didn't like the fact that everything was different. I guess he probably felt a bit scared too, because he didn't understand what was going on. He was probably even a bit worried. You know, what's going to happen next? Where is this all going to lead? And I think a lot of people are like that at the moment. I expect we're not really sure where life is going to go next, what school might look like, and whether everything's going to just feel like the way that it used to again. And the answer is, we don't know. And this can make all of us perhaps feel a little bit worried and a little bit sad. But in the story, we need to remember that Aziz did change. He discovered that though lots of things had changed around him, he could still feel happy again. Now I'd like you just to take a moment, just to be quiet, and just have a think quietly to yourself. I'd like you to think about how you could help yourself and you could help others who are finding that all these changes in our lives are maybe a bit difficult or a bit sad or a bit uncomfortable. You could remember Numi. She was brave because although she was scared, she was friendly to people even when they weren't perhaps quite so friendly to her. We need to try and find courage at the moment and friendliness within each one of us so that we could get through the time of change, helping each other with smiles on our faces and warmth in our hearts. That is how we can show care as a community at this time. Now, we're going to come back to that story next week and we're going to think about something else that we can learn from it. But that's all for today. So I hope everyone has a really good day, that we'll remember to find courage within ourselves, to be friendly, and to realise that although change is happening all around us, we can still be happy. Okay, everyone, take care. See you soon. Bye.